Good evening, everybody. This is Darius Assemi, your host at GBWire Unfiltered. Welcome to another great episode tonight, along with my co-host, Vice President of News, Dr. Bill, not Dr. Bill McEwen. He should be Doctor of Journalism. Uh,
Good
okay,
evening, Darius.
good evening, Bill. And of course, we have Nabil Kherfan, Fresno County Democratic Party member, who's going to be discussing with us the Fresno County Democratic Party's actions that they took condemning Israeli military. And we're going to get to that here shortly. But before we get there, let's talk about this gorgeous weather we had this morning. How about them apples coming out of the sky? Gorgeous, uh, brief air freshener. Got rid of all the crap in the air. Cool temperatures down temporarily. A little bit of a cooling off coming. Still triple digits next couple of days, but it should be a gorgeous weekend. And of course, we have a celestial events, a trifecta in September. Three items: September 7th, 21st, and 22nd. Three very cool celestial events. Take a look at that and the evening sky. Some will be visible from North America, some will not. Three polls. Let's put the first one. President Trump is floating the idea of a Republican National Convention ahead of the 2026 midterms. Which answer best reflects your sentiment about this? It's a bad idea. There was really no majority vote supporting any of the ideas, but it's a good idea, was close behind. Followed by the next poll. Now that GOP gerrymandered congressional maps in Texas are official for the 2026 midterms, how do you feel about Gavin Newsom's effort to do the same thing in California? Turnabout is fair play. Almost 2/3 of folks. And then finally, the last poll of the week. Do you support Israel's war offensive that's killing journalists? Over 200, maybe closer to 300. Choose the answer that best reflects your view. No majority on this, but the highest number was no. Israel must be held accountable for the Gaza genocide, followed by yes, civilian deaths are collateral damage until the hostages are freed. And then, of course, our next topic, United States denies visas to Palestinian officials ahead of UN General Assembly. It's kind of a little mind-boggling why we don't want to hear from the Palestinians, at least members of the Palestinian Authority or any other officials ahead of United Nations General Assembly, which means they're not allowed to come to the States. So we're not going to talk to one side of the equation, which is unfortunate. 8th flotilla for Gaza departs Barcelona after stormy weather turnaround. Bill, do we have any more information on this? Is that like multiple countries have come together for this? Is that I know a few Swedish folks are involved. Few actors, Game of Thrones actor Liam Cunningham, are on the flotilla. Several dozen boats that is aiming to break Israel's naval blockade and deliver food and humanitarian supplies to the enclave, which has been devastated by nearly 2 years of war. Israel has argued that the naval blockade it imposed in 2007 is necessary to stop weapons being smuggled to the Hamas Palestinian militant group. It has described other attempts to break it, including one that included Thornburg in June, as a propaganda stunt in support of Hamas. Any other info on this, Bill?
So, Darius, what we've seen here is these aid ships coming from Europe and other parts of the world. They serve two purposes: to bring aid, but also to raise awareness about what is going on there. So they're both for the people to help reduce the burden, the famine, which, as we know, Gaza has been declared in a famine officially, and to bring a lot more awareness. And so I think groups keep trying to do this in the belief that if they're consistently focusing on what's happening in Gaza, what's being inflicted by the country of Israel, you're going to catch more and more support. And since the start of the war, October 7th, uh, we've seen that happen. Initial worldwide reaction was in support of Israel, except for some Arab areas, as it should have been. This was an attack, it was uncalled for. We know the reasons behind it and why the Palestinians are so frustrated. But as more people have seen, Israel, I mean, it's not even a war. It's it's annihilating the people of a country. As more people have seen that, sentiment has changed on this subject.
Thank you, Bill, for that. And that brings me to the next topic that was covered on GB Wire, is Australia will recognize Palestinian state at the United Nations General Assembly in September. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said, I think that was over the weekend. The Irish are doing something similar. I don't have all the details. That may be coming up later this evening. Candace Owens has a lot of thoughts on what's happening in our country and across the world. And I'm gonna quote her. I'm reading articles from Doctors Without Borders who have been in many wars, and offered their services. And one of them wrote this piece, and said, "This is not a war. This is an annihilation." And he described the kids not having morphine, getting using a Civil War tool to saw off their limbs without morphine. And I took at Hollywood, and they said nothing because they're fearful that speaking out on this issue might get them canceled. What is the world to make of that sort of a cowardice, that sort of a hypocrisy? End quote. Candace Owens, conservative American commentator, she has her own podcast. You can check her out for this and a lot more videos and interviews with folks across the spectrum. And then there's a member of the Israeli Knesset that Ayman Odeh that made the following statement, and I believe this was recently over the last few days. Don't have the exact date of this quote. There are over 17,000 babies in Gaza, which your system has killed. And he's talking to the Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, in the Knesset. Of those, 825 are under the age of 1. 35,000 orphan babies in Gaza. The blood of all of them will haunt you, and still in your impudence, you wonder just how you are accused in the ICC, International Criminal Court. Tell me, for 30 years you have been a serial killer of peace. That's a question that the member of the Israeli Knesset, Ayman Odeh, asked. I think he was escorted out after those comments. Thousands of Israeli reservists report for duty as military chief clashes with ministers. There's exhaustion on the Israeli side. I guess it's not a war, it's annihilation, with a lot of U.S. support, U.S. taxpayer money, by the way. They've been going on for, well, October of 2023, so the 2-year anniversary is coming up. China's premier host, old friend Putin, along with North Korea's Kim, in a challenge to the West. That happened over the weekend. A lot of China is trying to replace the United States in the world scene, something that, of course, we have been concerned about for a few years. China has not surpassed the United States as the strongest or the largest economy in the world, but that's they're seeing an opportunity with the tariff wars and the United States getting out of certain economic ties or adding more tariffs, creating challenges, especially with India. I mean, to see India and China's premiers in the same room was pretty interesting over the weekend. More of that a video and article on GB Wire. Judge blocks Trump administration's use of troops in Los Angeles. Bill, was that over the weekend or
So
on?
that decision was just breaking, came out this morning. It's kind of after the fact, but it establishes the law regarding California. And we should note that California fought the troops being sent to Los Angeles. We had a U.S. Army general himself say that troops were not needed there. President Trump was looking, to stage a show to show that he's strong and he can preserve peace and reduce crime in the United States. And Darius, you know enough about protests in California. You've seen a lot of them. Those protests were not violent for the most part. They could have been handled by LAPD, LA County Sheriff's Office, California Highway Patrol. This was just Trump getting at blue states. And you'll notice that the president, sent troops to Washington, D.C. He's now saying, I'm going to send troops to Chicago. He's rattled his saber about sending troops to San Francisco. What do they have all in common? They're all blue states. He's not sending troops to red states that have higher crime rates and much higher violent crime rates. We don't hear the president saying, I have to send troops into Memphis, Tennessee to keep people safe. It's very simple. It's a red state. He's not going to do that. What we're seeing the most partisan acts in the history of the United States.
Bill, what about the folks that say these are all distractions away from the Epstein list?
Well, I'm not big on the Epstein thing. I mean, the man is dead. I don't know that we need Congress. Congress has some very serious issues. I don't know that we need Congress, looking to see who flew on the plane and all that. That can be done by the attorney generals in the states where he committed crimes. But I recognize that politically, there are those on the right, because Trump said we'd have a full investigation. So in that regard, it's good that the president's being held accountable. It's coming in drips and drabs. He's doing it very begrudgingly. And, it has cost him support in his MAGA base. This is one of those rare issues where you'll have a lot of Democrats and also MAGA members that they agree on something. That doesn't happen often.
Thank you for that, Bill. Garnet fire in Fresno County grows to almost 27,000 acres, 12% contained. And Bill, you wanted to talk about Nikki Henry's $162,000 buyout. Tell us about this.
So this column was written by Stephen Roche. He taught in Fresno Unified for 30 years. He's probably contributes a column every 3 or 4 months to GV Wire. We're glad to have Stephen given his commentary. And it's a good column because they took a question that I know people were asking. Okay, they gave Nikki Henry $162,000. How could that have been spent to improve student achievement, to make things better for students in Fresno Unified? So it's a twist. Nikki Henry got fired because she compiled this dossier against the Fresno Teachers Union, and she relied on AI. And AI generated fabricated quotes. And those quotes went in and were made public. She resigned. She could have been fired. I mean, that's just a grievous error. We're talking about education where plagiarism is not tolerated, where students and teachers are asked to do their own work. And yes, AI is a tool. It's being used in our industry, in the media, but it's just a tool and you have to do your own work. So he asked AI, what would be the best way to spend that 162,000? And AI came up with the answers. And basically, one answer was, you know, put a little less than a third towards elementary school, but put the biggest share of the 162,000 towards middle school and high school, because that's where you need to really make gains with students before it's too late. And, you want to build their confidence and their interest in learning. And then the second answer had very specifics about, hiring a part-time intervention aide, um, and spending money on tools and in general, all in the classroom. They were all good answers. And the column ends with, this board says that it's focused on these four pillars going forward. Make sure you spend the money, the budget on these four pillars that will help students in Fresno Unified. So a lot of interest in the column. Again, I thank Stephen for writing it.
Thank you, Bill, for that. And last item before we get to Nabil Kherfan is over the weekend, Mike Briggs, former Fresno City Council member and member of the State Assembly, passed away after a battle with cancer. Devoted his life to public service, arts, and community advocacy. And he was loved by many. Did he have a radio show also, Bill? Do you?
So Mike had Central Valley Talk. It was on, local digital TV. It was also online. He had a real estate company, Mike Briggs Properties. So he used that to promote real estate, but also to do profiles on small businesses, interview authors, local authors who are writing books, kind of a community chat board thing. Mike was interesting in that he was a Republican we don't see very much of anymore. I would say he was a centrist Republican, conservative on fiscal issues, in alignment with Democrats on a lot of social issues. He was a great guitar player and taught guitar classes and the like. His career started off like a meteor, and then it ended up kind of, well, it did flame out. And part of the reason was he was a part of a tough budget fight in 1998. The governor was Republican, Pete Wilson. He's battling the Democratic controlled legislature. They had a lot of disagreements on the budget. They had a deadline to get the budget passed, and to get it passed, a couple of Republicans, including Mike Briggs, went over and agreed with the Democrats and the governor on the final budget. And a lot of Republicans held that against Mike. He had started out at the Fresno City Council. He represented the Fresno High area, and he didn't even run for a second term. When Chuck Pachigian vacated his seat to run successfully for the state Senate, Mike moved into that site, to that seat. He served 2 terms. And then after this big budget battle, and he wanted a new kind of future, so he tried to run for the U.S. House of Representatives, and that was a stacked Republican field. You remember, you have former Mayor Jim Patterson in there, you got Mike Briggs, and you got Devin Nunes. And basically, Mike and Mayor Patterson split a lot of the Fresno County vote, and Devin Nunes was able to get the seat, and it was the start of a long run in Congress for Devin Nunes. Mike tried twice to come back on the city council. In 2010, he lost to Oliver Baines. And then just recently in 2022, he didn't make it out of the primary for the seat that was won by Annalisa Perea. So Mike had a lot of friends in the community. I think he was a principled guy when it comes to politics, and also he had a pragmatic view of politics. He believed in getting things done, and that ended up costing him. And that was the era where the start of the partisanship we see today, it got its birth, it started spreading.
Unfortunately, the voters support and promote that, basically saying that centrists, that people that are deal makers, so we can move the ball downfield and get results, whether it's immigration reform or foreign policy issues, those folks get punished. Uh, which brings us to our first segment. Fresno County Democrats condemn Israeli military action in Gaza as genocide. Let's bring in Nabil Kherfan. Welcome to our show, Nabil. Um, you are a candidate recruitment chair for Fresno County Democratic Party. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, great. So kind of tell us about how this came about. How many folks are there? Is it a Fresno County only? Is there affiliation with other counties? Why did the Fresno County Democrats take this up?
Great question, Darius. So I want to say that this has been an ongoing discussion at all levels of the Democratic Party, really since I would say late October, November, when it became of 2023, when the scale of what Israel was doing in Gaza just what became very clear to a lot of folks that it was unprecedented, unacceptable. Um, I could tell you that, back in 2024, I was heavily involved with the California Young Democrats, the youth chapter of the Democratic Party, and we passed a resolution then calling for a ceasefire. Discussion, obviously, we had the flag raising back in, I think, 2024 as well at the city of Fresno. But I would say when it comes to resolutions, I've known there's at least 3 ongoing right now. We had the Fresno County Democratic Party one, which is your local Fresno Democrats pushing this resolution. They were another resolution that came a little bit before that that was even stronger from the San Joaquin Valley Democratic Club. And that one is moving through the process and now it's going to come forward to the state party of Condemn. And that will come up sometime in the fall. And then there's also the DNC, Democrats at the national level, that were debating several different resolutions on, Israel's genocide in Gaza, and a strong progressive one that's similar to the Fresno Democratic parties was rejected by the DNC delegates in favor of a more moderate 2-state solution type resolution.
You said there's another county that's doing the same thing. I missed
So
that.
it's not like it wasn't the county; it was the club that calls itself San Joaquin Valley Democratic Club. I'm not sure what the boundaries are to be a member of that club. I'm
Okay.
not part of it, but I know I've been in conversation with some of those folks because we've been having these conversations for almost 2 years now. That's how long this genocide has been going on, and frankly, the numbers we're seeing in the tens of thousands of dead or wounded are not updated. We haven't been able to get accurate information. I imagine we're going to see hundreds of thousands dead once the smoke is cleared and finally journalists are allowed to enter Gaza from the outside and take accurate accounts.
Thank you for that. The Israeli flag raising, which was October 12th, 2023 in Fresno. As you mentioned earlier, Mayor Dyer, I think, was the main person leading that, along with Councilwoman Annalisa Perea, Council Member Gary Bredfeld, and Mike Karbasi. But of course, when that happened, it was a shock to the entire world how Hamas broke through, got in, attacked, killed, captured, kidnapped Israelis in a kibbutz. And from all the things we read is that the kibbutz was actually a pro 2-state solution kibbutz, a kibbutz that unfortunately got attacked by Hamas militants. So the flag raising occurred, and then December 2023, there was a Palestinian flag raising, and a council member, Miguel Arias, sponsored the event. You need to have a city council member sponsor it, and then Paul Dictos, Fresno County assessor, was a special guest. So what is the significance of this condemn mission? What does that mean? Why should people care? Why should congressmen and
Yep.
women across the country care? Because the Democratic Party of Fresno County, you have no influence over U.S. foreign policy. I don't want to say this is not a good thing to say, but you have no authority
Mhm.
over U.S. foreign policy. Congressmen and women can do whatever they want.
Mhm.
And by the way, why do you think they're doing? Why do you think the U.S. First under President Biden, a Democrat,
Mhm.
incredible support for Israel, and if I'm not mistaken, over $20 billion of military aid flew out of the United States under his presidency to aid Israel since October 7th, 2023. So why should they care? And why should congressmen and women and President Trump care? President Biden was in charge when a majority of the money funds flew out of the United States to support Israel, U.S. taxpayer money to go, help Israeli militarily, arm Israeli military.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll do my best to answer that. So
Okay.
they should care if they want to win the re-election. We'll start with that. Now, when we go back to October 7th, as you said, is very horrifying, and for Democrats, from Fresno and all across the country do mourn the lives that were lost on that day. It was very shocking and tragic to see and to read about, but it doesn't justify committing genocide in the hundreds of thousands of lives. It doesn't justify shooting children in the head. It doesn't justify bombing hospitals. Just last week, there was a hospital in Gaza that Israel bombed and then waited for journalists and first responders to arrive before double tapping and bombing it again, killing them. I watched the live stream on Twitter. Isn't that strange? That you can watch war crimes happen and live.
That was I think Bashar Assad of Syria did a lot of that. Bombed folks and then waited for the medics to show up, only to bomb them. Journalists to show up and bomb, or from helicopters. Why do you
Bashar
think?
Assad is a war criminal.
Bashar Assad, yes. Why do you think the United States, with all of our values, humanitarian values,
Mhm.
the president sees this. He said, "Hey, these are terrible. These are horrible images. Starving of kids,
Yep.
starving of folks, and then shooting. Israeli defense forces shooting as people are running to the aid shelters, trying to keep them in line. Uh, why do you think the United States government is, saying, well, listen, these are horrible. We really care about these folks, but we're going to continue to fund Israel militarily."
So my family, come from Palestine, but we were expelled in 1948 during the Nakba. So from a town called Tabaria, although the Roman name is Tiberias. So from our point of view, we've always seen this occupation as settler colonialism. I think part of the issue why our American government has trouble reconciling this is that we have our own history of segregation and settler colonialism. When you look at how we treated African Americans from the start and how we treated our Native Americans from the start. So to see that we are perpetuating similar levels of apartheid, of segregation, of racism, I don't know that our government is ready to reconcile with that. I think individual Congress members should take note of changing opinions. Yes, Israel has been a strong military ally. It's useful to have in the region from a military and intelligence perspective. However, regular Americans are no longer getting their news from mainstream media. They're getting it unfiltered. They're getting it through podcasts, through social media, through TikTok, where we can get firsthand accounts and get a different narrative. That's why, Quinnipiac, I don't think I'm pronouncing it right, but they released a new poll last week that 77% of Democrats and 51% of independents agree that Israel is committing genocide. And you see 60% of voters total don't want to see any more foreign aid. Yes, Joe Biden sent unprecedented amounts of money to Israel when he was president, and I'm sure Trump, with his Adelson donors, are going to send even more money to Israel. But most voters don't want that. We see how tough things are in this country. We see our groceries getting more expensive, gas getting more expensive, PG&E getting more expensive, and we need some relief from our own government. Why is our government sending billions of dollars to another country to shoot children? I don't want my government to kill children and starve people. I want them to make my community's lives better. And that's what a lot of voters, and especially Democrats, are saying. So I do think Congress members and senators they do have foreign policy jurisdiction on this, because they get to vote on whether we send that money. They have the power of the purse. That is what Congress is supposed to do. The executive branch enacts, and the legislative government holds the powers of the purse. So they get to vote on that. Unfortunately, they've been voting to continue this genocide, and that's where our government becomes culpable in this genocide. And the Fresno Democrats and a lot of activists across this country are saying, stop. We don't want any more of this genocide. We want a ceasefire. We want peace. And I'm not going to vote for this.
Good points. This is one of the articles we have on the page on our website. Gaza City Gaza City officially in famine, with hunger spreading, says Global Hunger Monitor. It's for so many of us, we just can't even think about an image of a 5-year-old screaming, running, just to get water or food. And or face starving to death, which is really, really unfortunate in this day and age, especially after what happens to what the Nazis did to the Jews during the Holocaust.
Yeah, we've seen Gaza described as a concentration camp in a lot of different news outlets. Because if you have a group of people that are being held in a small confined area, not allowed to leave, and they're under attack, they're being sniped, oftentimes just because they're in line for food. It's really unfortunate. It's really heartbreaking. And I know that there are so many Jewish Americans, and there are even some Israeli Jews that do not support this, and they want to see an end to this too. Because at the end of the day, we're all humans, and we need to treat all humans with dignity and respect.
Well, there's a lot of Israelis that are opposing this. There's rallies in Israel. The rallies, obviously, in our country and in Europe, South America. A lot of Jewish organizations are making sure that this is not. Don't conflate the two. This is not Judaism. This is not Jewish values.
There are many activist organizations led by Muslim and Jewish organizers and activists that are working together to speak up against this. This is not a religious conflict. Gaza itself is also very diverse religiously. We know Pope Francis would speak to Catholics in Gaza every night before he passed. So it's not a one religion, situation. It is conflict is much more recent than that.
Nabil, we got a lot of comments, and Bill has got a question, but you brought up something, and quickly I want to go back to. You said Adelson donors. Could you explain that?
Shariam Adelson, it was one of the billionaires that was bankrolling his campaign. We know Trump is for the 1%. He's for the rich. I'm not, defending other candidates, but he is it did receive a lot of campaign contributions to his super PACs. And, when you take money from, corporate interests, they expect to get something in return.
So what does that got to do with Israel?
Shira Adelson is a very influential Zionist, and they support Zionist candidates. You see that with other organizations like AIPAC that give to members of Congress as well in order to make sure that they also stay loyal to Israel.
Which we've talked about that on this show many times.
Miriam Adelson, sorry, not Shira. Miriam Adelson gave $100 million to Donald Trump in his 2024 presidential campaign, and you can read about that in thetimesofisrael.com.
And then, are you familiar? There's a bill going through, and I don't have the bill number in Congress, about providing veteran services to members of U.S. citizens that have also served in the IDF. Are you familiar with that bill?
I haven't read that bill. I saw a headline on that. That's ridiculous. Why would we give our taxpayer money to folks serving in a different military? We need to be taking care of U.S. veterans first, and this country doesn't do a good enough job of that.
Okay. I don't have all the details on that. We've discussed it here last few weeks.
Mhm.
I want to actually ask Bill if he knows about that bill and your comments. Bill McEwen.
So, Darius, I see it as a kind of a symbolic bill, a headline bill. I don't know that it's going to get serious consideration in Congress. We have many members of Congress that want to raise the flag for AIPAC and say, look at what I'm doing. I think that would be a hard vote. And especially when you consider the Freedom Caucus on the Republican side, they're already up in arms about this Trump deficit spending. And I think members of their communities would bring up, take care of, as Nabil said, take care of our veterans first. There's no need to do this. So this is not a bill that's of high concern to me, but like every bill, you need to track it until it either passes or it gets killed.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. English Lego has a question. Nabil, what is it? Do you know what the dollar amount the current administration has sent to Israel?
I don't have that number, but also this is only the first half of Donald Trump's administration. He'll probably be around for his full term.
Well,
But I know
it's not even quite 1 year.
Yeah,
right?
not even
So
quite 1 year.
Yeah. So there's like 85% left to go.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm curious how much money that our government will send to rebuild Gaza, since we have paid for all the bombs and weapons that have destroyed it. Who's going to rebuild all of the hospitals and schools and roads that were there 2 years ago that are not there now?
Okay. Well, there's a lot of talk about that. It's Saudi Arabia. We funded the bombing campaign and destroyed 80% of Gaza infrastructure, kids getting blown up. And like you said, we don't know how many actually have been killed trying to find the last, Hamas militants, and if there are any other surviving hostages. But a lot of Palestinians have been killed, and a lot are starving to death. Which is, I never thought in 2025 we would be on the side that President Trump can end this tomorrow and say we're going to open up, we're going to have United Nations or humanitarian aid centers, making sure those 2.2 million Palestinians in Gaza are not starving to death until we figure out where they're going to go. And also there's law and order on the West Bank. There's a lot of activities taking place in that part of Israel, Palestine as well. Do you have anything to share about what's happening in West Bank?
So, for those who don't know, when we think of what considers modern day Palestine, The two territories are the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Gaza Strip is what we're seeing this genocide unfold in. Has there's the last election for the Gaza Strip was in 2006, where Hamas took power, but the West Bank is overseen by the Palestinian Authority, a totally separate government entity, and that one is under the occupation of Israel. There are constantly illegal settlements being set up. People coming in and building towns on land that is not theirs, bulldozing homes and wells that are owned by Palestinians, or even just frankly stealing homes and claiming it as theirs. That's been going on since the 1940s, and it is unfortunately seems to be going to continue until we actually as a country, put teeth on these, and that means we can't send aid to Israel until they follow international law. If we want to believe in law and order, which is fine, you have to actually follow international law, which means you can't steal someone else's home, you can't steal someone's land, you can't terrorize people just because of the color of their skin. That's what's happening in the West Bank, and what Israel has been doing. And as long as the United States continues to fund Israel in their capacity, they have no reason to stop. If you're got a 16-year-old kid and you buy them a Ferrari for their 16th birthday, and they drive and they crash into a tree, you can't say, "Well, I'm really disappointed in you. Here's a new Ferrari. Don't do it again." And then they do it again. They crash into a tree again. You can't keep buying Ferraris. That is what our government has been doing.
Why do you think our government continues to do that?
Because historically there has not been much political will in the United States to support the Palestinian people. There has been a lot of support for Israel, but when you can look up the news outside of your mainstream media, you can look online on social media, on GV Wire, on other sources, and you can see that one side is on vacation, the other side is starving. You have children, you can see the children starving to death. You can see an account of a father holding two leaky trash bags and saying, "This is what's left of his child." It changes the thing, changes how we perceive this conflict. We see the inequity of it. And the power of media showing the truth has changed the course of opinion before. It changed how Americans view the Vietnam War. It changed how we viewed the Iraq War. It changed, it ended our torture programs in Iraq and Afghanistan because we saw the images that were coming out of those conflicts. And American people decided we weren't going to support that anymore. We're going to vote for elect Congress members and senators and presidents that say they're going to put an end to this conflict. And we're seeing that happen with Democrats. Democrats don't want to support candidates that are going to stand next to Israel while they are committing these atrocities.
Well, what do you think is going to happen with U.S. Congress, and what is the Fresno Democratic Party doing in the elections, the congressional elections coming up next year?
Well, the Fresno Democratic Party is going to support our endorsed candidates. They're going to support the Democrat nominees, but there are primaries for a reason, and they're going to make their voices heard. Two candidates, that want to be the Democratic nominee for certain races. I honestly, I don't. Well, how I understand this issue is very important. It's very near and dear to my heart. I don't see this issue playing a lot in your local races or even your like assembly and Senate races, simply because those candidates need to focus on kitchen table issues, the economy, and bringing our local community together. They don't have as much power over foreign policy, but your members of Congress and above definitely do.
I mean, there's a lot of money that gets spent in prosecuting that war that could be spent here locally, fixing potholes and providing health care and education.
Absolutely. Fresno's in a deficit. Fresno Unified is in a deficit. Pretty much all California's in deficit. Think of all the projects we could do with that money if it wasn't going to bombing cities and hospitals.
So is the Democratic Party like have a questionnaire or interview for? I mean, there's several local assembly, council members running for statewide office. Not
Yeah,
statewide. I mean, members of the assembly. Annalisa Perea is running for assembly. Esmeralda Soria, who is in the assembly, running for Senate.
mhm.
And then, of course, the congressional races. And you mentioned APAC. I mean, does the Democratic Party ask questions like, okay, you're a candidate for assembly, or you're a state senator, which means ultimately you're going to end up you want to end up in U.S. Congress. What is your relationship with the war that's being prosecuted right now? What are your thoughts? Not a relationship. Well,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts? And I mean, look at the state of California has got a bill that's running through right now, AB 715,
Mhm.
unanimously approved.
Mhm.
Which means the Democrats, majority Democrats, 75 or 80% of the assembly are Democrats. They all supported it. So if the Democratic Party is just going to endorse Democrat candidates, what happens if there's a Republican candidate that says, you know what, this war is wrong, and I'm going to
Yep.
oppose it? Are you going to still endorse a Democrat
Well,
candidate, or the Democrat candidate that goes, hey, we're taking money from lobby groups, and we got to continue to go with whatever our leadership tells us to do? But you have a Republican over here that goes, you know what? I want to stand up for America's values, and I'm going to make sure my voices are heard. If I get elected, that's how I'm going to communicate those are my thoughts and feelings. What would the
yeah.
Democratic
Well,
Party do?
so there's a couple questions in there. To the last point, and if you're asking about me personally, I'm going to support the best candidate for the position, and I strongly believe that it's almost always a Democrat. I will never say never, because sometimes there is a candidate who is a registered Republican who maybe is not MAGA, or they're moderate, or they're just the smartest and best person for the position. But you asked about the processes, and that's another. Or I'll start with Sacramento and then get to processes. Sacramento, AB 715, horrible bill. I definitely do not support that. By the time a lot of the organizations, free speech organizations, activist groups, were able to, really get mobilized against that bill, it had already passed the assembly very quickly. But it was, tabled in the Senate, and it'll come back at some point. I imagine a little bit different, and definitely with some more opposition.
Yes,
But
let me stop. There we go. The California Teachers Association opposes the bill,
yeah,
right?
and the CTA does a lot of great work. I always support our teachers in my other capacities, and because that bill would really ramrod and destroy the ethnic studies curriculum in California, and make it a lot harder to teach about all inequities in ethnic studies in defense of Israel. So it's really it's not a good bill. I hope to see it
Okay.
heavily amended or killed. But you asked about the process. So the Fresno County Democratic Party, which I'm here to represent, they endorse your candidates at the local level, your supervisors on down, to your small school boards and water districts. And yes, we do have our questionnaire, and we ask a lot of different questions depending on the seat, but we ask the same questions for each candidate to be fair. When you get to assembly, Senate, your statewide candidates and your national candidates, those are endorsed by the California Democratic Party, of which the members you elect, if you're a Democrat, to your central committee are part of that, but they're not the only part. Just like in the DNC, you've got super delegates, you've got, we call them Americans, you got your own other level of elected delegates. So there's a lot of people voting in those races. Though there isn't a questionnaire for those races, a lot of that is these candidates for Senate, for Congress, for calling, each of the long list of delegates asking for support. And in those one-on-one private conversations, that is where delegates have to ask, do you support the genocide in Gaza, or do you support a ceasefire? Do you support humanity? And
Have you asked that question of candidates for assembly and Senate? Zach Esmeralda Soria, Annalisa Perea. I don't know who else is on that list. But you have local Democrats, very active, very entrenched in our community, with incredible support from the community. Have you asked those folks? And there's a question that is coming from Inga, which I'm going to ask you next. But is that a question? I mean, there's multiple candidates for the assembly. Sandra Celadon, Annalisa Perea. I think they're both vying for the same seat. Have you asked that? Is that part of the questionnaire for the Fresno County Democratic Party?
So, like I said, for assembly, for
No,
council,
no.
yeah, no,
Okay.
we don't ask that in the question because we don't handle that endorsement process. That is the California Democratic Party, which does not have a questionnaire. Those ones are just straight delegate votes. So
Okay.
we don't in the Fresno Central Committee will not cannot endorse either Sandra Celadon or Arnold Perea because we are not that endorsement body. That is
Got
a
it.
CDP. Our members are all delegates and they will vote in that
Okay.
race, but we don't ourselves make that endorsement.
So Inga's got a lot of comments. I'm going to quickly go through those. She said money sent to Israel is not the cause for California budget deficits. That's a joke. The Democrats are right here in the state and Newsom. Well, there's a lot of issues for California's budget deficits, but dollars spent on foreign wars, prosecuting foreign wars, is less money spent in our country, whether it's for transportation, infrastructure repair, education, or whatever it may be. And that's, by the way, that's my point as well.
Mhm.
She also says, do the Fresno Democrats won't support Jim Costa? He voiced support for Israel here on this program last week.
I don't know if when they say Fresno Democrats, that could mean Fresno Democrat voters, Fresno Democrat,
The party,
party.
the party,
Party. I don't.
Fresno
Yeah,
County Democratic Party. Would they
that's
support
a
Jim
great question.
Costa?
If the California Democratic Party delegates, if the body above us, the state party endorses Jim Costa, then our central committee will endorse him. I don't know if they will. They might. They've endorsed him in every election he's run before. I've supported him before. But if he continues to vote, for sending money to Israel, while they're committing genocide, I don't know what they'll do.
Well, okay.
I'm disappointed.
Most members of Congress have continued to do that, right?
Yeah.
And hey, half of members of Congress, almost half are Democrat. They
Yeah.
continue to do that, and they continue to get endorsed. And my guess is all of them will get endorsed here in the coming months and over next year. And the same thing nothing will change.
Well, I have to have radical optimism that things will change because there are still so many lives that we need to do everything we can to save. I believe in the right to life, that people deserve to live, in freedom, in dignity, regardless of where they are in this world. We all have the same inalienable rights given to us by the Creator. But I don't. I know this is not the single issue for most Americans, whether they're Republican or Democrat. I don't expect most Democrats running for Congress or higher to get away with doing a town hall and not getting some question like this. I think they're going to have to face this, like they've had to face other controversial votes before. But like I said at the start of the program, 77% of Democrats do not agree that Israel's committing genocide. I can't think of any other policy so unpopular with Democratic voters that Democratic elected officials at the national level continue to support. I think things will change.
But there's a lot of polling that supports what you just talked about nationally as well. But I doubt that anything. It's going to be really. I doubt anything is going to change. So Bill had a comment before we wrap up in the next few minutes. Bill?
Nabil, thanks for being here, and I couldn't let you leave without asking about redistricting in California and Texas. And I'll just start with the observation that independent analysis, nonpartisan analysis, shows there's only really 35 to 45 competitive seats in our 50 states. Democrats in 2024, 3 votes short in the House to do something about Trump. What's the Democratic roadmap, considering this redistricting battle that's going on and the fact there are so few competitive states, competitive districts?
Yeah, that's a great point, Bill. So with regards to that, there are, like you said, not that many competitive seats, but that's because during the census and after that, when states have the right to redistrict, we're seeing so much partisan gerrymandering, especially in Republican states. The position of a lot of Democrats for a long time has been gerrymandering is wrong. We shouldn't do it, and Republicans should be ashamed of doing it. However, right now, what Texas is doing in the middle of the decade, unprecedented gerrymandering when it's not required. At this point, Democrats are fed up of just taking the high road. When they go low, we go high. We don't want to do that anymore as a party. We need to fight back for all of the values we believe in, not just what we've talked about in this past hour, but on civil rights, on women's rights, on stimulating the economy intelligently. So that's why you're seeing California take the lead, as California usually does, and redistrict our state, but at the will of the voters. I don't know if Democrats are going to have as much of an effect as they want unless other states, other blue states follow suit.
Nabil, and I just want to follow up on that. When you look at polling right now, it would seem to me that the key to the Democrats retaking the House would be to win over a lot of independents, because in all this gerrymandering, it's always about blue and red. And we know the number of independents or declined to state voters are at their highest levels in the history of this country. What do you see Democrats doing to win over independents to meet their goal of producing a blue wave?
Yep. Absolutely. They need to mobilize independents. They need to outreach, phone banking, door knocking, media ads, all kinds of outreach to show that they actually have a message. Yes, Donald Trump is doing a lot of unprecedented and inappropriate things, in the term, but it's not enough for Democrats to just say, we're not Donald Trump. They need to actually have a vision and need to stand by their values.
Okay.
Thank you.
Those great questions, Bill, and answers. Cam Malloy says, "Is it possible that one of the reasons Benjamin Netanyahu is prolonging the conflict is to stay in power?" Quickly, because we're almost out of time. Nabil?
Absolutely, 100%. Yes, he is racist and he is committing a genocide. He also is doing this to save his own butt because he has lost his own election several times. He shouldn't be in power. He is staying in as prime minister and using the emergency powers of this war in order to continue avoiding the jail that he should be going to. Although at this point, maybe Israeli jail is not enough. He should be in The Hague.
Cam Malloy, another comment. Everyone matters or no one matters. Well said, Cam. I mean, isn't there folks that go, hey, Palestinians are actually not human beings? Have you heard that?
Yeah, a lot of people say I have heard that. I've
In Israel,
been Palestinian my whole life. They say, and yeah, in Gaza, in Israel too. A lot of people do believe that, which is unfortunate. And it's not going to make ending this conflict any easier if you cannot see other people that look different than you as human. We have to be able to see the humanity in each other, even if we have disagreements. I hope Israel can see that soon.
one sidebar note that I don't know if we covered that today, Bill, or not. It looks like President Trump is considering removing marijuana as a class 1 and converting it to a class 3 drug. So it'll be competing with what is it? Not Advil, some of the other painkillers, but not in the same class as LSD or cocaine or some of the other narcotics. Stay tuned for that
Anything to
over the next few
distract from the
weeks.
Epstein files.
What is that?
I said anything. Trump will do anything to distract from the Epstein files. It seems.
Okay. And before we wrap up, Eddie Freedom says California Democrats voting for unconstitutional gun laws. What is your message to the voters, to folks that English language, but death to Israel, all call comes from the Palestinians? Is that true?
No, that's not true.
Okay.
It comes from the Palestinians. There's all kinds of Palestinians. If they're talking about, Hamas, that's sure we can talk about Hamas. But to say that every single Palestinian, from your 87-year-old grandmother to the baby that was just born and is gonna die of starvation, they're not all saying that. That's not.
It's also and it's also, if you've been occupied, you've been bombed, you lost your dog, gosh, you lost your cat, you lost your sister, you lost a limb, you're almost dying, and you're occupied, and nobody's coming to your help. It's difficult to get. I really love my neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
unprecedented numbers of child amputees, the highest child amputee rate in the world.
We covered
now.
this.
Yeah.
Highest.
It's very sad.
We had one of the guests here, Trita Parsi, that talked about this several months ago, maybe over a year ago. What's happening in that part of the world, unfortunately, is the biggest recruiting for extremist groups against Israeli and U.S. interests, which is really unfortunate. I have several very close Jewish friends here in Fresno and Southern California. Several that I grew up with, Iranian Jews, and there's a mixed bag. Majority are really ashamed of what's going on in that part of the world. There's a few, I have to also admit, that are very aggressive. They said that all that property belongs to the greater Israel. But
which the map of greater Israel is not Palestine. It also includes invading Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, a U.S. ally, all Egypt. And we've seen that map, that phrase greater Israel, starting to be used by members of the Israeli government. So the fact that they're saying the quiet part out loud, that their plans are not just for Palestine, it is to conquer other countries, even countries that are U.S. allies, that is concerning. That's really dangerous, and we need to change tactics because we need peace.
Well, I think a lot of us are praying for peace, but there's a lot more money in war than peace. We've seen that. That Dwight Eisenhower's famous farewell speech, which warns the U.S. public, the American public, about the military-industrial complex. But that's a conversation for another day. Nabil, thank you for joining us this evening. We hope to have you back, and
Sure.
hopefully with really positive news that the war has ended. There is a two-state solution with peace between Palestinians and Israelis, coexistence. Folks in that part of the world are all Semites. I'm not talking about the folks that immigrated there, but there's a lot of Semites in that part of the world, and we respect all of humanity. We talked about this a few weeks ago. What would Jesus do if he was here today? What would his message be to the evangelical Christians about what's happening in that part of the world? And I hope that President Trump, who said he cares a lot about what he's saying, said these images are horrible, that he'll step up and put an end to this. And,
Donald Trump has the power to end it today. He has the power. Donald Trump has the power to call Benjamin Netanyahu and say, we're not going to give you any more guns, any more bullets, any more bombs, no more money until you stop this and come to the table. And every day in his entire administration, he has chosen not to call and not to end it. Every day he makes that same choice. So I hope tomorrow he will make a different choice.
But also the same thing happened with President Biden,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And
President,
you know, it was very disappointing. It was very, very frustrating. And you know, I think that part of why Harris lost is because a lot of her base did not see her change tune. They saw the images happening and they did not want to vote for it. And if she said she was going to do different, I think a lot of voters in those key states that went to Trump because Democrats sat out, they would have gone to her, and maybe we'd have a different story now. But that's why it takes it. We need courage from our politicians to speak up against this.
yeah. President Biden did a few things, especially the way we pulled out of Afghanistan. That was really a shame.
Yeah.
That was responsible for so much pain and suffering in that part of the world, especially the folks that actually helped U.S. forces that got all left behind. Probably a lot of them, I hate to use this word, but got killed or slaughtered.
The Taliban is a very brutal organization, and it's unfortunate what happened, but a lot of presidents hold responsibility for that because they kept us in that quagmire, they got us in that quagmire, and it didn't help America going to war in Afghanistan, and it didn't help the people in Afghanistan either.
I know you're not President Biden, but I keep on more of these questions keep coming up. I'm trying to wrap up this podcast. So why did President Biden not make that call?
I wish I knew that answer, and I wish I was able to speak with him and tell him that you made a mistake and you should have actually cut off aid if you wanted Israel to do something, because Israel had no reason to listen to Joe Biden when he says you need to go for a ceasefire, you need to stop doing it, because we kept sending them all of the missiles and all of the aid that they asked for. If we're giving them everything they ask for, they have no reason to listen to him. And they disrespected Joe Biden so much. They disrespected him. I really worry that President Biden's legacy will be this genocide in Gaza and not all of the great things he did when he was president.
Last question for you again. What is your message for the voters of Fresno County? Especially the Republicans that go, hey, we support peace in that part of the world.
Okay, that's a great question. So to Republicans, I will say this last cycle you voted for America first. You're not getting America first if our presidents and your politicians' priorities are protecting Israel and sending all billions of your tax dollars when you're in a deficit. And I know you care about fiscal responsibility. It's not fiscally responsible to send billions of dollars to go commit war crimes and atrocities when that money could be spent paying down the deficit or going back to your community or giving you a tax cut. They're not doing that. They're sending all that money overseas, and they're going to make our lives harder. Inflation's still going to go up. To Democrats, I would say we got to flip the House. We have to flip the Senate. We have to get back in power. We have to claw back some way to hold Trump accountable. And once Democrats do that, we have to actually stick to our values. We can't just say we're not Trump. We have to actually have a message we're campaigning on. I think Democrats are going to do that. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people in the midterms. I think we're going to see some seats flip. Definitely some seats in the Valley if the redistricting passes.
So if the Democrats take over, but nothing changes in Israel and Gaza, then what?
Then
more of the same.
People will be very demoralized, and I think Democrats will lose power for a long time if they cannot change course. But they have to actually listen to the voters, not just corporate interests, not AIPAC.
Okay. Bill, final comments?
Final comment, people keep talking about Biden's debacle in Afghanistan. Donald Trump promised to have Afghanistan wrapped up during his first term. I think what Donald Trump did is deliberately delay the end of the war there so he could hand a mess over to Joe Biden and make him look bad. Trump didn't keep his word. And also, Donald Trump directly negotiated with the Taliban when in the history of the United States, our great country, as our commander in chief, stooped to the level of negotiating directly with terrorists. Donald Trump is a joke. And if America goes to hell in a handbasket because people love Trump, well, God bless them. And I pray for their children and their grandchildren.
Well
Thank you
said.
for having the show tonight.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Nabil. Donald Trump, here's the question. Do you not talk to your enemy? Do you not talk to your enemy and go, hey, we got to make this deal or I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to you, which we know the United States military has both the intelligence and the capability militarily to annihilate the Taliban. Why wouldn't you talk to your enemy, Bill?
Well, American established value is you don't negotiate with terrorists.
Okay.
You don't give in to them. You don't put them on your level. Because when you negotiate with terrorists, you're encouraging them. You're giving them
Elevating
reason to spread. You're saying,
Yeah.
hey, you've been successful. You've brought America to the negotiating table. Only a brain as small as Donald Trump's, and that is too big, could come to that conclusion. And he came to
Okay.
that conclusion because he wanted to set up Joe Biden for failure. You know, he's very good at that. You're passionate about immigration reform. We could add major immigration reform.
I get
Donald Trump killed it. Yeah, Donald Trump.
that was really that was unfortunate because nothing has come of it. Now we're only 8 or 9 months into his first term. I hope that a lot of these things get turned around and quickly for the sake of the country.
The leopard
and
never
the world.
changes its spots.
We're gonna leave it at that. Nabil Kherfan. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correct, last name correct. Nabil Kherfan. Is that correct?
Yeah, Kherfan's fine. Thank you.
Kherfan. Thank you for joining us, Bill McEwen. Thank you. And hope have a great week, cooling off nice week this weekend, and hope to see you all next Tuesday evening.
Take care. Bye.
Good night.